My name is Ramdas. Ramdas means servant of the Lord Rama. I'm a rickshaw driver. Usually I begin my work very early in the morning and may work till midnight on a slow day, so breakfast is often the only time my wife and I get to talk together. I'm 28 years old and have lived all my life in the village of Taprana, north of Delhi in India. I want to tell you about this village and about some of the changes that have been happening here. In Taprana, most everyone begins early in the morning to make the most of the daylight hours. Our village is made up mostly of landless laborers and small farmers like Bhulan. Bhulan is one of the best farmers in Taprana. Like all of us, Bhulan has seen and been part of the changes that have been taking place in our village over the past 3 years. This is something my wife and I often talk about. My wife earns a little money making clothes for others because she is very clever with her hands. But she has two deep regrets. We have no children, and she cannot read and write. Most girls in her village never go to school, and in this village, adult education is only for men. In a place like Taprana, customs are very old. There are traditions and beliefs which have divided us for a long time into several groups. These groups have mixed very little in the past, but that is beginning to change now. Our children mix and play, and some of them go to school. Perhaps in time, they will have fewer differences than we do. Of course, we have to depend upon each other despite our differences because we are so poor. Many mornings before I go to work, this man cuts my hair or shaves me. Then, when he needs to go somewhere, I will take him in my rickshaw. No money changes hands between us. But as much as we help each other out just to survive, we remain divided in many important things. The divisions in the village don't affect me as much as most because I carry people from all the different groups in my rickshaw. That way, I learn a lot about what's going on, not only in our own village, but also in the villages nearby. I get a chance to hear what people think, and sometimes hear things they won't say out loud in their own part of the village. Tomorrow is going to be a very special day here. The dairy cooperative will hold its first annual meeting. I am a strong believer in the co-op, even though I don't belong because our cow gives only milk for our own use. There is a lot of excitement building up in Taprana about tomorrow's celebration. We have never had one before, so we don't really know what to expect. But I know that the co-op secretary arranged for me to pick him up this morning to take him to our nearest bank 10 kilometers away. And that has something to do with tomorrow's celebrations. You can see how bad this road is. The water just stays and turns the earth into mud. Our roads are like this all through the village. Most mornings, unless someone has arranged for my rickshaw the night before, I just go to the main road at the end of the village and wait with the other drivers. That's where the Tongas wait too. Those horse-drawn carts cost less, but if they can afford it, most people like to use rickshaws. Today, I'm a bit later than usual leaving, because the secretary had to do some work at the co-op first. I prefer to leave early because the heat is less for the long trip into the city where I do most of my work. It's about 10 kilometers away from here. That's our school. It has no furniture or lighting, so the children learn to read and write outdoors. Not many people in Taprana can see a practical use for education, so that a lot of children don't go to school at all. I know that without education, I can only drive a rickshaw to earn a living. You have to be pretty desperate to have to choose this as a way to work. I started 12 years ago. I'm lucky so far. Many of us get tuberculosis and few last very long as the work is killing. I have to work every day of the year. I ride my rickshaw 50 kilometers or more to earn 15 to 20 rupees. My wife and I need 15 rupees a day now just to keep alive, and I need the rest to pay the loan on my rickshaw. The only change I get is when the grain is ripe. Then the landlords need everybody for the harvest. My wife and I like this time of year because we can work together. We like being together, but we don't get much chance. When we work in the fields, we are paid a portion of the grain we harvest. Without that, we would not have enough to eat throughout the year. I have told you there have been many changes in my village in the past 3 years. You may not be able to see them, and you may be wondering how they have affected me. Let me tell you. For 10 years, the rickshaws I drove were always rented from rich men from the city who owned as many as 70 of them. I paid 5 rupees each day to them, and I owned nothing. There was no way out for me or for the other men in this village who peddled rickshaws. Not one of us was rich enough to own one, and we could never earn more than enough to barely keep alive. I know that after 12 years of hard work, I had been able to save nothing. But things are different for us now. This is how it all began. About 3 years ago, 2 strangers came to the village. One of them was white, and in all my life, I had never seen a white man in Taprana. They said he came from a place called Canada. He came with his friend from the National Dairy Research Institute in Karnal near here. They just sat with us and talked, and above all listened to us and asked us about village life and what we thought would make it better. After they went away, word went around that the white man was going to spend a lot of money here. But that was only rumor, and we know better now. They did not give our village enough money for even a piece of thread. But they did 2 things we are beginning to think were even better than giving money. Even though most of us don't read or write, they taught us a new way of learning with our eyes and our ears. Then they showed us we could do important things for ourselves and for others like ourselves, even in other villages, things we never would have thought possible before. After those men first visited, community workers from the Dairy Institute began to spend time in Taprana, talking and listening to us. A little while later, we heard that in another village some distance away, something very unusual had happened. There, the Canadian and a friend of his had worked with the people from the Dairy Institute to help them learn to use equipment that took pictures of people and recorded their voices. But the most surprising thing was that the pictures and the voices could be seen right away on the television set. We were amazed at that at first. We don't even have one television set in Taprana. It's only in larger places where some people have enough money. But the people from the Dairy Institute carry everything with them for making what we call village movies and for showing them to us. It wasn't very long before they brought the equipment to Taprana. You can guess how surprised I was that the very first time they used it in our village, I was involved. In fact, it was because of that very first videotape that I got the loan to buy this rickshaw, and so did the other men. I can remember that morning very clearly. These men, who are rickshaw pullers like me, sat as we had done many times before talking with our community worker from the Dairy Institute. We had told him how helpless we felt because much of our money went to pay rich men for the rent of rickshaws. Of course, we could not borrow from local moneylenders because interest rates are so high we could never repay their loans from what we earned. Besides that, none of us believed people like us could ever get loans from any bank. In fact, we never would even think of going into a bank. But as we talked in front of that video camera, we also said we were honest men who would not run away from repaying money. We had many years' experience, and our dealings had always been trustworthy. When we had finished talking, the community worker said the videotapes should be shown to other people to let them know what we believed. But before anybody else saw it, we would look at it ourselves. You know, that was the first time some of us had ever seen a picture of ourselves. And it was certainly the first time we had ever seen a moving picture of anybody we knew. A few days later, the community worker called us all together and showed us another videotape. On it was the manager of the bank in Karnal, a man nobody here had ever seen before. We were astounded to see and hear him talking to us on that tape about the points we had discussed. Afterwards, when we talked with the community worker, it all became clear. The Canadians had thought that videotapes made with people like us are to be shown where they can be most useful. We wouldn't have been surprised if the bank manager had been angry, because on our tape we had spoken of things we believed banks did wrong when dealing with village people. Instead, he had said that we had made great sense and told him things he hadn't known before. That had been astonishing enough, but then on the tape he had invited us to come in to the bank and discuss getting loans. We still found it hard to believe, but the next week we actually did that. Before long, 8 of us from Taprana had loans for our rickshaws. It's the first time any man from here has ever owned one himself. Although I still find it a bit strange to deal with the bank, we are learning that there are many things we can do for ourselves once we know how to go about it. This trip this morning is to the same bank that gave us the loans for our rickshaws. Now our new co-ops do business there too. The secretary is going to pick up 6,000 rupees that will be divided among all the dairy co-op members at the ceremony tomorrow. That's more than I could earn working every day for a year. The fact that we even have the co-op is another example of how the videotape has helped us. Farmers in Taprana had always sold their milk to buyers from the city who come to pick it up on motorcycles. Selling milk is important for our farmers to live, but they had never had any control over what they were paid or how their milk was handled. They were cheated in price, and their milk was always watered down by the buyers. The men from the Dairy Institute knew that in some other villages, farmers had done something about the same problems as we faced by setting up dairy cooperatives. It would have been impossible for all of us to go to that village to see for ourselves, but the Canadians said they had used videotape in other places to bring villagers together. So we did that. Farmers just like ours from another village taught us on videotape how to market for ourselves and how to produce good quality milk. I was at the first screening of those tapes in Taprana along with Bhulan and many other farmers from our village. I go to all the screenings here, even those with groups that are not my own, because I'm interested in everything that goes on. So I remember very well how those screenings started the farmers in different groups in this village thinking about forming their own cooperative. Bhulan was one of the first to see how much sense it would make to get rid of our dependence on the milk peddlers. He understood that he would have to work with all the other farmers in the village. That is unusual in itself because Bhulan is from the scheduled caste, the lowest group in this village. Normally he would only associate with others of his own group, but he is a man who works hard and thinks a lot. So he, along with some other men, pushed for all our dairy farmers to get together. From the very first day, Bhulan sold all his milk to the co-op, and he is on the board of directors, even though most of the other farmers are from other groups. When the farmers take their milk to the co-op each morning, it is tested and they get paid for the quality that they bring. The farmers who belong to the co-op are getting a lot more for their milk than they were ever paid before. In addition to selling the milk, the co-op is now also making paneer and selling it in the city at a high price. We are only small and poor still, but we have seen now that we can make things better for ourselves if we can get information that we understand. And that is one of the ways in which videotape is so helpful. It's almost like a new reading and writing for those like us who can do neither. Improving our earnings is only one of the problems we have. There are still lots of others, and we know we can only earn anything if we are healthy. I dread the thought of becoming ill, but there is much sickness in the village. Many people have tuberculosis. Nearly all of us have malaria at some time during the year. Until videotape began to be used, we did not know very much about taking care of ourselves. We didn't know that a lot of things in the village helped to make us sick. For instance, all over the village there are malaria pools, and unless we get rid of them, malaria will always be with us. We learned that and many other things about health from videotapes that workers showed us. Since we started to help ourselves, we are finding other people are helping us too. Take medical care. A group of doctors from a clinic some kilometers away got interested in what was happening in this village. Through our community workers, the doctors saw us on videotape and learned of our health problems. Now doctors come every week. It is the same in several other villages in this area. Our community worker sometimes goes with the doctors to the other villages, and when he comes back, he tells us what happens there. It's no different than what happens here. Until these doctors started visiting villages like ours, the only medical help we could get would be by going to clinics in the city. We had 3 quacks who visited our village to deal with our health problems, but they knew nothing and had no training. Now for the first time, we can get the proper medicine we need from the doctors when they come. It has made a big difference. But the doctors don't just treat us for sickness we have. They try to teach us how to take care of ourselves so we won't get sick so often. Our community workers have helped the doctors make videotapes so that we can understand better the things they are telling us. And do you know what is so amazing? They are actually using videotapes made in Thaprana about tuberculosis and childcare and malaria to help people in other villages. I was proud when I learned of that. It is not often that people like us think we can help other people. 2 years ago, we would have laughed if anybody had told us we could help doctors. But videotape has shown us different. Our workers have told us that the tapes made in our village are really helping people in other villages to learn to take better care of their health. The videotapes that the doctors and our community worker have made with us on health and childcare and other matters concerning running a household have been specially helpful to the women in Taprana. My wife goes to see them at the program for women that the visiting lady community workers have. Those ladies come a long way at their own expense to help us, and the only pay they get is our thanks. My wife agrees that videotapes like these are the best way to learn because they are made with people who speak the way we speak, in language we can understand, and we can see them doing things we can understand too. It's different from trying to teach us things on radio. It usually has long speeches in words we cannot understand. And you know, since most of us cannot read and write, nothing printed teaches us anything. That's how videotapes are different, and we talk about them a lot. You can see that there are many rickshaws here in the city and competition is heavy. You have to keep moving all the time to make it pay. If I'm lucky in the evening, I get someone to take back to my village. Sometimes when I'm waiting for business, I get to think about the changes that are happening in the village and how nearly everyone seems happy about them. I also get to think about how much more we have to learn and to do. But I'm encouraged by how far we have come since those men first visited and since that first tape we made. I guess the biggest change is that now we know that we can do things for ourselves. Videotape hasn't done these things, we have done them. But videotape has helped us learn how to do them and given the confidence we needed. We don't think we could have learned so well any other way. Today is going to be a little different for me. I won't stay in the city, but will return to my village with the secretary as soon as he has taken the money from the bank. He has a lot to do before tomorrow, and I think I want to be in Taprana for the rest of the day, for there will be lots going on getting ready for tomorrow. We are all waiting and wondering what tomorrow will be like. The only thing that's certain is that it will not be like any day we ever knew before in our village. We have so few celebrations here. In my whole life, I can only remember weddings. Except for weddings, this is one of the very few times I've ever seen our Taprana band. When they play, you know something really big is going on. The headman from the National Dairy Research Institute came, and it was the first time such an important person in dairying had ever been here. He spoke words of praise, and that pleased us. Our friends from the Dairy Institute and from Canada were there too, and we were glad to see them and to learn they would continue to work with us. I noticed today that there were men from other villages who will have stories to tell at home tonight. Stories of something good that's happening in Taprana. Who would have thought 2 years ago that anybody would want to learn anything about farming from Taprana? But they are now asking for information in other villages about how we got our vegetable producers co-op going and how to get a dairy co-op started. And we are making videotape here now to show them how we did those things. We have always been regarded as the poorest and the worst of village around here, but that is certainly changing fast now. I believe for every one of our farmers who stepped up to get his first dividend payment for his first year with the co-op, it was the proudest day in his whole life of farming. Farmers are busy elsewhere, so they send their sons, and that was a good thing because we want to get everybody involved in the many things that are happening here now. Bhulan sold the most milk to the co-op, so he got the most payment. It may be a while before we have another festival like this, perhaps not for another year. But I'm not worried that we will forget why we had this celebration today. People here have come closer to each other. Now we sit and talk and work together more than we did before. If the whole village can come together and work together all the time, that will be even better. I think I see it coming.